Para andyan na si Mr. Haru. Okay, good evening everyone. So now we are going to discuss the IVT theorem, the sandwich, and the trigonometric functions. So basically, before we discuss the trigonometric functions, we first discuss the sandwich theorem. Now, before we proceed to our discussion, we have the limit of theta as it approaches 0. Now, I ask you, what is the limit of this one? Now, some of you tell that the limit of that one is 0. The limit of this one for Mr. John does not exist. Now let's see how can we evaluate the limit of this one. So before we evaluate the limit of that one, you write this on your notebook first. Then write your answer. Done. Mr. Arukan, what do you think is the answer on this one? If you substitute theta from 0, the answer would be this is 0 over sine 0. What is sine 0 on your calculator? Sine 0 on calculator is also 0, right?
0.
Ay, hindi ba? Ano? Ano? Tama, ano? So
Tama po,
basically,
0.
when we say 0 over 0, we have already discussed that one, no? Because 0 over 0 is a type of limit such that if this can be evaluated through factoring. What are the other steps? Conjugates, radicals. What are the other one? What is the other step? Conjugates, radicals, factoring. Pang isa, rationalization. No? How now you try factoring. Can you try factoring in solving this one? Can you try? Can you try rationalization? Can we rationalize sine theta? Can we rationalize this theta? What can we do? Now, try on your notebook first, no? So we can explore the answer for this one. So after trying, no, on what are we going to do here, no? Because if we replace sine theta by another trigonometric identity, 1 over cosecant theta, there is still no answer, right? So how are we going to get the limit of that one? So write this on your notebook and write your answer, and later we are going to define the limit of this one using the what we call the squeeze theorem. So basically, squeeze theorem, if you will read its definition, it's quite complicated. However, in this graph, we have a function x and g of x. No? So this function of x and this function g of x is the opposite of the opposite of each other. So basically, if we have some function, no, we have some function h of x, let's say h of x here, that is sandwiched between f of x and g of x. Now you can say that the limit of f of x and the limit of g of x is equal to the limit of h of x. So that is the squeeze theorem. So correction here, let's say this one, we have the function g of x. So this is the sandwich g of x. The buns, no? This is the one. Then the function f of x, this one. Ay, meron pala akong I'll erase first. Yeah. So let's say that f of x is our top function. So don't ignore first this definition. So for example, we have a function of f of x, right? And we have some function which is h of x that is bounded between f of x and g of x. So basically, this f of x and this g of x is the buns. Why? Because this f of x and this g of x, kinukulong niya yung isang function which is h of x. So based on this squeeze theorem, the limit of this function from the left, no, if the limit of the function from the left, which is this one, and the limit of the function g of x, which is this one, there is equal. Therefore, the limit of h of x is equal to the limit of these three. Gets? Are you getting my point? If we have some function that is sandwiched between f of x and g of x, if the limit of f of x equal to g of x, then of 2 equal to the so biglang f of x doesn't equal to 0. Or the limit of g of x equal to 0. If we get the we get value that equals 0. So this is what we call the squeeze theorem or the sandwich theorem. So basically, it just tells us that the limit of the first function is equal to the limit of the second function, then this limit L is equal to the limit of the middle function. So meaning to say, if we have a function that is bounded here inside the graph, for if x approaches some value a, let's say that a is 0, the limit of this blue, red, and green function equal to 0 as long as it follows the inequality such that this f of x, let's say the green is f of x is less than or equal, less than only to the middle function, which is the red one. Let's say the red one is g of x, and the upper function, which is the h of x, the blue ones. No? So if the limit of f of x is equal to the limit of h of x, that limit is also the limit of the middle function. So basically, by squeezing a function with the limit at a point a that is unknown, having a common known limit at a. So if we have a limit at some point a, no, and that limit is unknown. So let's say the limit of this function red. Limit of this function red. We do not know the limit of the function red. But we can get the limit of the function red if we get the limit of the upper and the lower function. Now, if the limit of the upper and lower function is equal, therefore the limit of the middle function is also equal to 0. So, yun lang naman yun. Kung ano yung limit ng nasa taas, kung ano yung limit ng nasa baba, yun din yung limit ng nasa gitna. So, for example, we have two functions, b of x and a of x. Now, let's determine the limit of b of x as x approaches 3. So, this is 3. So, as x approaches 3, what do you think is the limit of b of x as x approaches 3?
1.
3, 1. Very good. How about a? If we took a here, then we
1 din.
approach 3, the answer is also 1. Right? Now, meaning to say, the limit of the function in the middle, let's say m of x, is also equal, as x approaches 3, is also equal to 1. Right? Are you getting my point? As
Yes
it,
po.
yes, okay. So, let's review inequalities first, no? So, for example, in multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number, the sign of the inequality reverses the inequality. So, for example, we have 1/3 x plus 2/3 less than 5 over 6x minus 1. How are we going to simplify this one? We are going to treat this one just like an equation. So, for example, we have 1/3 x plus 2/3. This is also equal 5 over 6 x minus 1. Now, this equality sign is just a representation of how are we going to solve the limit of the value of x for this one. No? However, there is an inequality. Now, what does this inequality tells us? Meaning to say the other side of equation is less than to this side of the equation. Now, what does this rule says to us? Now, let's try to solve. What are we going to multiply to cancel the denominators? Ano yung multiply natin? The LCD, right? What is the LCD of 3, 3, and 6? We will have LCD of 3, 3, and least common denominator of 3, 3, and 6. 3, 6, 9. 6, 12, 18. So the least common denominator is 6. So we can multiply all sides by 6. Ay, nawala. Okay. So let's multiply this by 6. So multiplying that by 6, we will have 6 multiplied to 1/3 x plus 2/3 less than 5 over 6x minus 1. Then distributing 6 would be the answer. We would have 2x because 6 divided by 3 is 2 plus 2 less than 6 times 5, 30 divided by 6, 5x minus 6. Am I correct? Mr. John, am I correct? So, if we try to tra transform this 5x to the other side of the equation, and we transform this 2 to the other side of the equation, leaving x behind, so we will have 2x plus minus 5x less than negative 6 minus, am I correct? Can you check if I am
Yes po.
correct? Okay. So therefore, if you'd have a inequality, if we solve this one, we will have negative 3x less than negative 8. Now, the rule says multiplying or dividing both sides by a negative number reverses the inequality. So, therefore, negative 3x less than negative 8. If we get x, we divide this by negative 3. Hi, hi, I stop. So, the answer is x positive 8 over 3. But since dividing or multiplying both sides by a negative number, we reverse this inequality to x greater than 8 over 3. Gets? So this is the answer. I see. Sino to? Okay, let's continue. Any questions? None? Now let's proceed. Now, if we have a double inequality, now why am I discussing this one? Because in this theorem, we will have an inequality, right? Why? If you would observe the graphs of the function in the squeeze theorem, this function is bounded in the middle of the upper and the lower function, right? So therefore, if we represent this function, no, if we represent this function into an inequality, we can say that the middle, this one is the one that is bounded, right? And this is the one that is bounded, and this one is the one who bounds the 3x plus 5. You get? So therefore, if we graph this, let's assume the graph of this one is upper and the graph of this one is lower, even this is a constant function, then the middle equation is the function in the middle that is being squeezed by these boundaries. Gets, Mr. Santiago? Or any
Yes po,
question?
yes po.
Any question? Okay, how are we going to solve this one? So same, it's just a review. We have to leave the x behind. So how are we going to leave the x behind? We just, so okay pala pag English, dire-diretso ako. We just multiply both sides by negative 5. So negative 16 minus 5 less than or equal to 3x less than or equal to 20 minus 5. So the answer is 21 less than or equal to 3x. 20 minus 5 is 15. Then to left x. Now we just divide this by 3. So right? Then we will get an equation. Negative 7 less than or equal to x and less than or equal to 15 over 3, which is also equal to 5. Now, what does this inequality also tells us? Remember that this inequality, we can also write this as negative 16 less than or equal to 3x plus 5, and another equation, another inequality, which is 3x plus 5 less than or equal to. Do you get? So these two equal to this one. This one is this one. Gets? We can separate this both into two inequalities. That's why it is double inequality. So if we separate that into single inequality, we can get the inequality of the first one and the second one. Okay? Now, going back, Miss Comendador, how are you going to answer that one? Since you are late, what do you think? Miss Comendador, what do you think is the limit of this one? You may choose between the letters.
0.
0. So you
Una
have
lang.
you have a both answer with you have the same answer with Mr. Santiago. Mr. Yaya, Mr. Arucan, what's your answer?
Ano po sa
Lahat po sira 0.
0 rin sa akin, sir.
0. Oo, dun madami eh, no? Pag 0
Walang
yan,
letter
anong
D, sir.
gagawin ko sa inyo? Paano pag D? Anong gagawin ko? Sure kayong 0 yan?
Sure ako, sir. Sa B ako, sir.
Di ka. May points. Okay. Wala nang baguhan na. So later, we are going to determine that, no? So, if we are going to solve this type of trigonometric functions, we are going to use squeeze theorem. No, so when you say squeeze theorem is commendator, that is just the limit if the function of the upper, no, is if the limit of the upper function, which is the distance, is equal to the limit of the second function or the lower function g of x, and the h of x is sandwiched between these two boundaries, then the limit of f of x, g of x is equal to the limit of h of x. So, kung ang limit ng taas at baba ay parehas, yung limit nung nasa gitna ay parehas din sa taas at sa baba. So, that's how simple it is, no? Okay. How are you going to prove the squeeze theorem? So, is this the first time you have encountered this proving this proof of squeeze theorem? Ba dapat tinuro sa senior high yan? Di ba tinuro yan doon?
Hindi pa po sa amin.
Mr. Santiago. Ikaw, Mr.
Opo,
Santiago.
ngayon ko lang po narinig.
Ngayon mo lang narinig. So,
Hindi rin sa akin.
Mr. Arucan, baka naman na-discuss na. Hindi ka lang nakikinig.
Hindi rin, sir. Wala
Yeah.
pa pong ganun.
Okay. Now, we have to get the answer of you answered 0 right. Now, let's try to determine what would be the answer. Now, this one is a part of a unit circle. So, have you watched the video on the unit circle? Diba? I have posted the video discussing the unit circle.
Yes po.
Yes, okay. So obviously, some of you have already know this one, but some of you also have no idea. If we say unit circle, the radius of that circle is equal to 1. Therefore, if the radius is 1, no, if we get some angle here, we can get the value, no, or the length of this one. Know that the radius of this is 1. We know this radius is 1, and we know we have an angle here. The question is, how are we going to get the value of y here and the value of x, which is here? Now, there is a Babylonian invented the trigonometric function such that using the angle on the other side is versa. So, may angle na triangle, no? Because in x is what? Based on the SOHCAHTOA descent over hypotenuse, this, right? Kasi ito yung katabi niya, adjacent. Over hypotenuse, SOHCAHTOA. What is our hypotenuse? Point A to B. But we know that in unit circle, that yan. Now, how are we going to consider at the region? So, this ray, I have this ray A, let's say ray AB. Okay. Now, how are we going to use squeeze theorem? So, first, we write that in terms what in terms ano daw? In terms of coordinates, no, paano natin isusulat si F in terms of coordinates? How are we going to write F in terms of coordinates? What does coordinate contains? We have x and we have y. Now, how are we going to write F in terms of its coordinates? No? So, to write F in terms of its coordinates, we have to know the value of its x and we have to know the value of its y. So, meaning from A to D, the length of that, no, is the x. No? So, basically, from A to D, look from A to D, the value is 1. So, this is the x. Now, what is the value of y? If we get the value of y, we would be approximating the value of y here in the y coordinate, right? Now, what is the best way to determine the value of y using trigonometric functions? We're going to use tangent x. So, why are we going to use tangent x? Remember that this arc na inclined dito sa ating angle. So, therefore, if we get the ratio between the opposite one and the adjacent one, we are going to get the angle using tangent x. So basically, based on this figure, our y is tangent x. Right? So we have now our x here and we have now our y here. So what are we going to do? So remember the tangent theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. Now, what is the coordinate that represents the opposite side if the angle is here? Now, focus on the figure on the bigger triangle.
Sine.
Answer? Opposite ng...
Sine.
Hindi.
Doon sa SOHCAHTOA.
Hindi. Ilalagay natin siya sa irarate natin siya as coordinates. So basically, coordinates is this. No? So when I say A to B, meaning to say from A to this to B. If I say B to A, I put here B to A. A, E, B. So that's the coordinates. Now, how does this becomes DF? Because the opposite of this angle is this one, right? And the coordinate of this opposite is DF. What is this DF? The tangent x. Now, what is the adjacent? What coordinate would tell us the adjacent? This should be the AD. Why AD, Mr. Yaya? Because from
Ito yung adjacent.
if we are going to draw this one, no, let's look at the bigger triangle. This is tan x, right? We have A to D, o civil, mga civil. We have F, no, to D, mga civil eng. Dapat alam niyo yan. Tangent theta, what is AD? What is the length of AD? This is a unit circle, so therefore the length of AD is 1. Right? Now, if there is the angle here, opposite over adjacent, ibig sabihin, if we write the coordinates, in terms of coordinates, the answer is df over AD. But since AD is equal to 1, no, if we write tangent theta in terms of its coordinates, the answer would become df. Gets? Mr. Aruka, why does it become df? We have d here. We have f here. This is the theta. Miss Comendador is right. However, we are talking on the bigger triangle here. Kasi diba meron tayong small triangle, which is ito, at meron tayong bigger triangle. Kuha. So, pag kinuha ko yung opposite niyan, edi itong malaki, tangent x, over yung aking mababa, no? Which is 1. Kuha. Oh, Mr. Santiago. Gets? Any questions?
Sir.
Ah.
Yes.
Ba't nga ulit po naging 1?
1 because the length, if you would see, from A to D, the length is 1. Because if you get the length from A to D, the length is 1. Because this is a
I
unit
gets na, sir. Kasi mo
circle.
circle.
Oo.
Paras na yung radius niya.
Yes, oo.
Gets na po.
So therefore, tangent theta is df, no? So next, what are the inequalities in terms of sine theta and theta and cosine theta? So we are implying the squeeze theorem here. How? Based on the figure, how do we know that we are implying squeeze theorem here? Because what? Remember squeeze theorem, there is a sandwich. So there is a buns, there is a patty. So what do you think is the patty on this one? Parang iba yung na-drawing. Oh. Sin x and x. So basically, etong si arc ko, si arc BD ko, siya yung nasa sandwich between sin x and tan x. Gets?
Gets po.
Yeah. Mr. Santiago, gets naman. This is the arc BD here. And we have a lower function sin x bounded by the tangent x. So, squish theorem. Now, we were trying to prove, the limit of the one that you answered a while ago. You said 0. Now, let's see if it would be 0, no? So, if we write the inequalities in terms of sine theta, no? In terms of sine theta muna tayo. So, sine theta is equal to opposite over Charuhan, hypotenuse. Now, what is the opposite here? Sine theta. Tingin kayo sa
Tan?
Lower triangle muna.
Sine.
Yeah.
Sine.
So, BE. No? Yun. Yung pa-straight na ganito. Ito yung opposite. Bakit 1? Because our hypotenuse is in the unit circle. Yes. So, therefore, sine theta is this equal to BE over 1 or equal to BE. Now, we are done with the sine theta. How are we going to write the inequalities in terms of theta? In terms of theta, we know that the formula for theta is what? Arc length over radius. What is our arc length here? We have arc length dB and a radius of 1. So therefore, arc length BD or dB over 1 is just equal to dB itself, right? Or just equal to theta itself and sine theta. However, how are we going to write the inequalities in terms of cosine theta? Now, this is the cosine theta. This is cosine x, ha? This is not cosine theta. You are being confused no, with this one. So, let's try to solve this one. So, how does this become tangent theta? No. According to the proving, write the inequalities in terms of cosine theta. How are we going to write the trigonometric identity of tangent theta in terms of cosine theta? We have sine theta less than theta less than. What is the trigonometric identity? Tangent theta is equal to sine theta
Sine theta
over cosine theta. So
over
therefore,
cosine.
we have already built our inequality. Now we would apply the squeeze theorem here, no? Now how are we going to apply the squeeze theorem? Now this is the first function. This is the second function. So a while ago, we know that this arc length dB is being squeezed, no? Being squeezed by two functions, by two lines, BE and another line FD. Basically, if I get the limit of this lower bound, I get the limit of the upper bound, kapag equal yung limit nilang dalawa, yung limit ng nasa gitna, equal sa kanilang tatlo. Diba? Understood? Mr. John Yaya? Mr. Arukan, any questions?
Wala naman po, sir.
Oh, Mr. Santiago, any questions?
Wala naman po.
So that's squeeze theorem, no? So let's say we have function x, no? Function x here, sine theta, no? Less than or equal to g of x, which is this theta that is being squeezed, no? Between sine theta and sine theta over cosine theta. Now, let's say if we get the limit of the lower function and the upper function, no? This L limit is also the limit of the middle function. So that's what squeeze theorems. So squeeze theorem tell us, no? Now how are we going to do that? We get the limit of the function sine theta, but first we have to simplify this one, right? We have to simplify this one. Remember that we are in a unit circle. What do you think is the maximum value of sine theta here? If we are in a unit circle, any guess? If we are in a unit circle, no, what I think is the maximum value here, the lower bound? -1, right? And for the upper bound, since unit circle nga, +1. So meaning to say, my maximum value should be 1 and my minimum value should be -1. No, bawal mag-equal sa dalawa, no? Basta napapagitnaan ng -1 to 1, pasok siya sa theta, no? Now, in order for us to make this sin theta as 1, how are we going to make sin theta as 1? We have to divide that by sin theta also, no? So let's solve these inequalities. So that's why we review inequalities a while ago. So in order for us to get 1 here and 1 here, we need to multiply this one by what number? Para maging 1 yung parehas, anong multiply ko? Or anong i-divide ko? Multiply ko ng 1 over sin theta. Because multiplying 1 over sin theta to the both of the equation would get us sin theta over sin theta less than theta and less than, maka-cancel pala, no? Si 1. Sin theta, magiging 1 over cosine theta na lang to. So at least, ito, naging 1 na lang. No, napasimplify natin. Now, if we multiply 1 over sin theta, we would get 1. How does this become 1? Because sin theta over sin theta is just equal to 1. Diba? Same number divided by numerator over denominator just equal to 1. If we multiply theta to 1 over sin theta, the answer is theta over sin theta. If you multiply sin theta, no, to this one, we can cancel sin theta. Then the remaining value for the numerator and denominator is 1 over cosine theta. Now we get the limit, no, of the upper function. So this is the upper, this is the lower. Now if we get the limit of that one, what is the limit of theta as x approaches 0 of 1? What theorem is this? This is constant theorem, right? If we have a limit of c as x approaches a, then the limit is c. So therefore, the limit here is 1. Tama? Now, we also have to get the limit of the upper bound, which is 1 over cosine theta. So how did we get cosine over theta? We just simplify this inequality by multiplying 1 over sine theta. Why 1 over sine theta? To simplify this one into 1, because that's the minimum and maximum value of this upper and lower bound. Now, if we get the limit of 1 over cosine theta, as theta approaches 0, what would be the answer? Try direct substitution, what would be the answer?
Zero.
Bakit 0? 1. Ang cosine ng 0,
1?
ilan?
1 po?
1. Yan. So therefore,
1 divided by 1.
si first function equal to the second function. Then what is the limit of the middle function? What is the limit
1.
of the middle function? The limit of the middle function is 1, not 0. Amazing. So this is the new theorem. And we have solved that using the squeeze theorem. Gets? Walang sumagot ng 1, di ba, Mr. Arohan? Naki-0 ka lang din.
Sayang, sir.
Pero sir, yung hindi
Hmm.
tayo nagsimula dyan sa
Hmm.
theta.
Tinan mo ha.
Sir, pwede pa balik dun sa ano?
Saan? Dito.
Yung kanina po, yan.
Dito? Ayan, kabayan mo na. Oh. Bakit 0
Ano, sir?
sinagot niya? 0/0 nga siya. Pero that's a guess, no? So basically, the limit of this one is just 1. So that is squeeze theorem, no? So later, there is a theorem. Kasi late kayo, 7:20 na, hindi tayo aabutin ng trigo. Anyway, let's continue. Yeah. So okay, using the squeeze value theorem, determine the limit of x squared sine x. Now, in your academic institutions, your professor sometimes would not tell you that you have to use squeeze value theorem. Now, after we discuss derivatives, there is some rule which is called the L'Hopital's rule. So when we say L'Hopital's rule, this is the way of getting the limit of any function using derivative. But since we haven't still discussed, tama ba grammar ko? We still haven't discussed derivatives. We first use some theorems, no? But if you learned L'Hopital's rule, you can check whatever limit you are going to take, no? Kung tama or mali siya. But you don't have to do that on our summative assessment because you are going to show your solutions. That is not based here. If I say use the squeeze value theorem to determine this one, you will use the squeeze value theorem. No? So, okay, review. The graph of the cosine. What is the maximum value for y of the graph of cosine x? And maximum value 1. And its minimum value is -1. So basically, hindi siya pwedeng lumagpas ng 1. No, hindi siya pwedeng lumagpas ng -1. Kailangan natin nasa pagitan lang yan. Right? Now, for the sin x pala yun. For the sin x, 1 and -1. For cosine x, ganun pa rin naman. The maximum value is 1 and the minimum value is -1. Now, how are we going to solve this one? Using the squeeze theorem. So how are you going to evaluate that one? What do you think? Now, there is, in solving that one, there is what we call the bounded, no? There is what we call the one that is being bounded, no? And the one who bounds the function. So basically, if I write the inequality of this one, I would have in the middle part, the technique here is that the trigonometric function is the one that is always bounded by the function, no? So basically, if I say bounded, we need to have the target that dapat nandito si x squared, tapos si sin x nasa gitna, then si x squared nandito pa. Pero negative x squared to. Naintindihan. Now, we have to target that this sin x is the one that is bounded. But in the function, we are given x squared sin x. Right? Now, what is the minimum and maximum value for this one? It would always become -1 and 1. In order to solve this one, what are we going to do? Para ang matira na lang
Sir, the answer is 0.
Ha? Para ang matira na lang ay sin x. Anong gagawin nyo? You divide both sides by x squared.
Squared.
Or multiply both sides by x squared over x squared. Bakit x squared over x squared? To retain the property of 1. What is the property of 1? Any number divided by itself is just 1. So basically, in solving this one, we would have negative x squared over x squared than sin x. Why sin x na lang? Because x squared is cancelled. Less than x squared over x squared. Right? If you multiply this by x squared, the x squared would be cancelled and the resulting function would be this one. Kita? Ngayon, paano na natin siya isa-solve? You get the limit, no, of negative x squared and the limit of x squared. Bakit ko i-get ang limit nitong negative x squared at x squared? Para makuha ko yung limit ng sin x sa loob. Pag nakuha ko yung limit nun, ayun na yung limit ng function ko. Nakukuha. So, sir, bakit po dinivide ng x squared? Remember, the maximum and the minimum value is negative 1 and 1. So, if we have a function here in the middle, we need to find a way such that we can transform x squared to the other side, but we would still retain the property that the lower and the upper function is negative 1 and positive 1. So, one way to do that is to divide this function by x squared, no? If we divide this function by x squared, then the resulting answer here is negative x squared, and the resulting answer is the resulting answer here is 1, and the resulting answer here is positive 1. So we retain the minimum and the maximum value of this symmetric function. X squared, so it's x sin x less x squared. Now, what are we going to do next? We have to find the limit of this one. Because this one and this one is equal, the limit of x squared is equal to the limit of this one. So, yung squeeze theorem, because you can solve this by direct substitution. Just like I have
Sir,
said,
hindi gumagalaw yung mouse mo. Yung mouse po hindi siya gumagalaw.
Nagalaw na. Okay. So, I'll repeat. So, x. So, basically, we need to write its maximum and minimum value. The maximum and minimum value of this sin x is 1 and negative 1. So, ito na yon. Ngayon, gusto ko matira lang sa sides. How am I going to simplify? We have which the sin x is sin x is 1 and the value for sin x is negative 1 divided by x squared. So, if you divide the x squared, I will get by x squared. I will get 1. So, I retain the price. Now, multiply squared by myself is this function with less than x squared. Then, we get the y squared. We get the limit of 1 and the function equal to 5. For example, we have 5. Tapos, cos x. What is the function that is being bounded? This cos x. And function that bounds is x raised to 5. And in terms of inequality, if this x raised to 5 bounds cos x, the value would be negative x raised to 5 less than x raised to 5. Gets? Let's say we have x tangent x. What is the one being bounded? Tangent x.
And it's
Therefore, in inequality, the answer is x less than positive x. So that's how it is. No? Now let's try to get the limit of that one. I will done copying
Na-screenshot na po.
Ayan. Now, if we try to get the limit as x approaches 0 of x squared negative, what is the limit? So basically, the answer is 0. And the limit as x approaches 0 of x squared, the answer is also 0. So therefore, the limit of the middle function x squared sine x is equal to 0. So hindi siya palaging 0, ha? Yun lang yun. Any question? None. So let's continue. Now, how about this function? What is the one being bounded here?
Cosine 2 over x.
Yun, cosine 2 yun. And what's the one that bounds the function? This x raised to 4. So this is the bounded. This is the one that bounds cos 2x. No? So yung nag-iipit dito sa cos 2x. Now, what is the maximum value of cos x? Maximum value
1.
is -1 and +1. But since the middle function is x raised to 4 cosine raised to 2 cosine 2 over x, so we would have x raised to 4. How are we going to simplify this inequality while maintaining the property of -1 to 1? Are we going to do?
Multiply by
Yan, by
x4 over
positive.
x
Yan,
squared.
tama. If you multiply that, then the answer, shortcut na lang, the answer will become negative x raised to 4 and positive x raised to 4. So, yun yung shortcut doon kung ano yung ano. Now, ngayon, giget nyo na yung limit. Pag si 0, nag-approach sa negative x raised to 4, at si limit, kapag si x nag-approach sa 0, at kinuha natin yung limit ng x raised to 4, the answer is 0, the answer is 0. Therefore, the limit of the function that is being bound of this function, I'm low, but is also equal to 0. So you have to show me why this one, wait for the program to listen. So you have to show me why this one, no, in your assessment, you have to prove to me that this function is 0. So using squeeze value theorem. However, life is not full of rainbows and butterflies. How are we going to solve the limit as x approaches infinity but we have 2x cubed plus sine x squared over 1 plus x cubed. So I'll just get my charger and think of the way how can you get the limit of that one. Yeah. So how are you going to get the limit of that one? Any one of you? Any suggestions? Mr. Yaya.
Doesn't exist.
Does not exist. Why? You have to prove to me why it is. Does not exist. Ano yun? Okay, for example, if you are given by a complicated function, one thing you have to do, most important thing you have to do, is to utilize the inequality. Dito kasi, ang ginamit lang natin is less than, right? That's why we multiply x squared over x squared, then that is the long way in books. No? If you would see books, ganun yung ginagawang way nila. But there is a shortcut for that way. So we have to utilize the inequality, no? So for example, this one, limit of, I give you an example. Limit as x over 3 as x approaches 0. Ay, limit as 2x over, ay, wag na yan. Limit as x approaches 0, x cubed, tapos sine x. If we get the limit of that one, we need to utilize the inequality, ha? So, basically, we will have negative 1 uh, uh, greater than or equal to sine x greater than or equal to positive 1. Now, how are we going to get the limit of that one? We would set negative 1, no? We would set this sine x as equal to negative 1. Why? Because, based on the inequality, negative 1 can become less than or equal to sine x and less than or equal to positive 1. Kung less than or equal siya, ibig sabihin si negative 1, pwede siyang equal sa sine x, right? So if we substitute negative 1 here, what would happen? The minimum value is negative x cubed. Now, since sine x is less than or equal to 1, then we would have an equality also such that sine x could also be equal to 1. So if sine x is equal to 1, the maximum value is equal to what? Of this function? X cubed times sine x. But since sine x is equal to 1, the maximum value of the function is x cubed. So this is the inequality. You get my point? So this is just the same here. Pag ginawa kong 1 to, negative 1 to, ang makukuha ko dito is negative x raised to 4 sa aking minimum value. Pag ginawa akong positive 1 tong cosine over 2x, therefore, ang makukuha kong value dito ay x raised to 4 ang aking maximum value. Ngayon, paano kapag dito? How are we going to do that? What is our equality? Or inequality? Negative 1 less than or equal to sine x. Bakit sine x? Kasi sine x yung nakalagay dun. Less than or equal to positive 1. Now, since mayroon tayong equality, sine x, to get the minimum value, sine x could become equal to negative 1, and the maximum value is sine x should be equal to positive 1. Now, to get the minimum value for this equation, we are going to let sine x equals negative 1. If we are going to let sine x squared is equal to negative 1, then what would be my resulting equation? You would have 2x cubed since this sine x squared or sine x is equal to negative 1. Therefore, this would be replaced by negative 1 also. So 2x cubed minus 1 over 1 plus x cubed. Then our middle function is 2x cubed plus sine x squared over 1 plus x cubed less than or equal to, what would be my maximum? 2x cubed
2x cubed plus 1.
plus 1 over, very good, 1
1.
plus x cubed.
X cubed.
Ngayon, simplify na natin siya. We're going to simplify that one.
Multiply by
Yes,
1.
multiply, no? So, easiest way is, now you try this on your notebook, no? Kailangan ang matitira ko sa gitna is same function dito. Try to simplify this first. So, paano gagawin? And get the limit as x approaches infinity. So, we have already discussed limits at infinity. Practice. have to pause the recording. So I'll resume the recording and show to you the answer for that one. Now, in order for us to answer that one, nakuha na natin, di ba, yung maximum and minimum value. We could simply get the infinity of that
I
one.
think 2. 2 and the maximum and the minimum.
Okay? So,
Hindi ko sure.
if we have the limit as x approaches infinity and the function is 2x, ay, teka, plus, ano ba yun? Sin x squared. Ano yung denominator?
Minus 1, sir.
Ano yung denominator? 1 plus x cubed, right? We get the minimum since negative 1 is equal to sin x equal to positive 1. So therefore, 2x cubed, the minimum is minus 1 over 1 plus x cubed. How about the maximum? Since max natin, we would utilize the positive, tama. Ito yung kanina in-utilize natin. Ito. At ito yung utilize natin. Ito. 2x cubed plus 1 over 1 plus x cubed. Oh, meron na tayo. Basta makuha nyo itong min and max. We already have our function. So, 2x cubed minus 1 over 1 plus x cubed less than or equal to 2x cubed plus sine over 1 plus x cubed less than or equal to x cubed plus 1 over 1 plus x cubed. Then, in order for us to get the limit of this one, we should get the limit of the upper and lower bound. Because the limit of the upper and lower bound is just the limit of the middle one. So, if we try to solve limits at infinity, x approaches infinity of 2x cubed minus 1 over 1 plus x cubed. What's the answer? We divide by the highest power. What's the highest power here? X cubed. So, 2x cubed minus 1 over x cubed. Tapos sa ilalim, 1 plus x cubed over x cubed. Ano na lang matitira ko dito? 2
2.
minus 1 over x cubed tsaka 1 over x cubed plus 1. But since 2 this is equal to 0 because of our theorem that 1 over any number that is odd infinity, the answer is 0. Then here the answer is 0 plus 1. So the limit of this one is just equal to 2. Now let's try the other value. Kung plus naman. So ganun din, no? So kung plus naman, the limit,
Yun pa rin po, sir.
2 pa rin, di ba? Anong limit nito? Di 2. The answer
So, tama
is...
yung sa akin 2, sir.
tama ka, Mr. Yaya. Gets? Diba, madali lang. Ang mahirap lang dyan, how are you going to get the minimum and maximum? But just like what I have said, you have to utilize the minimum and the maximum value the inequality. Yung ginawa ko kasi dito, long cut yun sa previous natin. No? So that's all for our lecture for today. Gonna stop the recording.